even if you take nothing away and you don't think this improves your drawings of heads at all, if you get this much, I'm going to be really psyched, because this is the kind of thing that if you have it in your mind, it'll really be helpful for you over time. So that first drawing, she's looking up, and if you could just look at that picture, you can see the third of the face, that is the forehead, is much smaller than it would be if she was facing us directly. So that's the kind of thing I'm keeping in mind. So here I have a version of her face, some kind of ovoid, and then I think, okay, the center line is still pretty much in the middle because her features are still basically in the middle of her face. And just think about if maybe the brow line is up here, and this is sort of maybe the eye line through the tear duct, and there's this kind of curvature from the bottom of the nose, and maybe if this is the mouth, just thinking about the proportions are just different than they would be otherwise. And maybe her neck is coming out like that, and you have the ears. The other thing that's happening in this pose is her ears are super low because she's looking up, and that's also another indicator of what's happening. And the neck is kind of coming out of this sort of ear dimension. And I know this is kind of like, it's a funny looking kind of strange drawing, but it really does tell you quite a bit about what her face is doing. In this next one where she's tilting to the side, I'll just do sort of a tilted ovoid, and now her features are not so much in the middle of her face. They're really like, there's just maybe it's 2/3 on this side and 1/3 on that side. I'm not really good at explaining proportions, so we'll just kind of go with that. And then the same thing, like having these lines that show the brow, and again, her head's tilted a little bit forward, so we're getting more of a view of this kind of area above the brow line. And making these curved marks is just a way to remind you that we are dealing with a curved surface. So if this is the bottom of the nose maybe, and then this is the mouth, we're seeing a little less of the chin area, but she's not really tilting that too far away from us. So it's not like it's super, super dramatic. And the neck really kind of comes right out of this area, and you see more of it on this side because of this severe tilt that she's giving us. And then, I think that really helps when you start to, if you were to start being like, well, let me build this nose, the nose is in shadow, and you kind of build in that shadow on the side, and just, it helps you sort of find the dimensionality of the situation. And again, the side of the lip is in shadow, and you can just kind of build that in, give a little shadow to the chin. You can do very little and really communicate a lot of sort of the faceness of this face. There's some shadow in the eye, and then you can just sort of bring all of this over and connect it. And even if you just start with things like this, and kind of correct the contour of the outside a little bit, her cheekbone is quite prominent here, and then it kind of rolls back into the chin. You don't have to give that much, and then you all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's a person, and this person has hair, and their head's doing a certain thing, and it's not doesn't have to be maybe as complicated as you might think it would be. And this would be really hard to make this kind of pose if you started this and then you're like, okay, trying to draw the eye on an angle without any kind of line to guide you. Just as much harder to do that. So, the same thing as when I was talking about with the arm, finding the underlying curve of the arm and then adding sort of the overlying curves, the base boundaries and then the overlying boundaries. It's the same thing here. Like, find the underlying curve and then build your features on top of it. And she's doing kind of the same thing the other way in the next picture. And we can tilt the head this way, and again, you get this little tiny neck. And there's a kind of a lot of face and neck over here because she's not super forward, but she's a little bit forward. If we give her some of her hair, and then here the ear is higher because she's kind of turning her face down and away from us, so the ear is kind of up and over a little bit. So like this ear's up here, but if we could see the other ear, it would be down because she's got this tilt for her head. And if here we could give a little bit of the brow, again trying to show the curvature of the face, and the bottom of the nose and some of the mouth, just to give a little cast to the direction of her face. And in this kind of situation, it can also be useful to kind of stop your lines a little bit, because not continuing these all the way over sometimes does also remind me that, okay, we have a lot of face here that doesn't have features in it, to give space for the ear and like let this be the cheekbone, and let this be kind of the upper part of the temple, and just let those things be dimensional space, but that doesn't have actual